Allen Lund Company, 47 years young and a proud sponsor, wishes OOIDA all the best as you celebrate 50 years.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Scott Thompson.
Senator Steve Daines of Montana is leading the charge to stop FMCSA's speed limiter mandate proposal in its tracks, and today he joins the program to talk about it. Senator Daines was kind enough to fit us into his busy schedule, and we made the most of our time together. We'll talk about his concerns about the speed limiter push, what kind of reception his bill is getting in the Senate, and he also has some tips for truckers who want to get involved. That's a little later on in today's show. Then from Memphis and Nebraska to South Dakota and Florida, there are new truck parking spaces going in all over the country. And while that's welcome news, the truck parking crisis continues. Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine joins us with all the latest truck parking news in our latest installment of The Parking Zone. And finally, we do our weekly check of the spot market. The lead-in to the holiday weekend had a positive effect on both demand and rates. Robert Rouse of DAT breaks down the numbers for us. So we've got a jam-packed show for you today. But first, the news with Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Scott. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association is opposing efforts to mandate automatic emergency braking systems on heavy trucks. In formal comments filed this week to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, OOIDA said the proposal fails to ensure the technology will meet necessary safety standards. In addition to opposing efforts to mandate the technology, OOIDA called out the agencies for failing to consult with truck drivers before submitting a proposal. Jay Grimes is OOIDA's Director of Federal Affairs. He said this technology is concerning.
There are some commercial trucks with the AEB technology on it right now, but the major problem is that it doesn't work as intended, and we hear all the time about these false activation alerts really taking control away from the driver's hands and really, causing some dangerous scenarios on the road where the technology isn't working the way it's supposed to.
The agencies gave the public 60 days to comment on the proposal. According to the regulations.gov website, NHTSA and FMCSA received a total of nearly 1,100 comments. Many of them came from truck drivers who said they have had bad experiences with the technology. Now the agencies must review the comments and determine whether or not to move forward with a final rule. OOIDA asked the agencies to address the false activation problems before implementing a mandate. Diesel prices are up again slightly nationwide. The Energy Information Administration's weekly report has last week's average up almost 2 cents from the previous week to $4.49 a gallon. Prices went up in almost every area EIA tracks. California had the biggest jump at 12 cents a gallon. The lower Atlantic saw a decrease of 1 cent a gallon. ProMiles.com also reported an increase in prices. It had the Wednesday morning average at $4.45 a gallon nationwide, up 8 cents from a week earlier. All 10 regions in the ProMiles report saw increases. The West Coast saw an 18-cent increase, which was the highest, while New England had the lowest increase at 3 cents. A trial date has been set in the wrongful death lawsuit by the widow of a truck driver who was killed after he collided with an Amtrak train in Missouri last year. KMIZ reports that Aaron Barton of Brookfield, Missouri, sued track owner Burlington Northern Santa Fe, a BNSF manager, and Chariton County in July of 2022. In June of last year, Barry Barton II died after the dump truck he was driving collided with a train. 3 passengers were killed and 150 people were injured. Barton's wife alleges the crossing had a steep incline, poor visibility, and no active devices to warn drivers of trains. The case is set for a 2-week trial starting on October 28th. The governor of Montana and the premier of Alberta are calling on the federal governments on both sides of the border to open the Wild Horse Port of Entry for 24-hour service to expedite trade and citizen travel. In a letter to President Biden and Prime Minister Trudeau, the two leaders stated that due to limited hours of service and deficiency of facilities and infrastructure, the Wild Horse crossing serves as a primary bottleneck containing north-south traffic and trade. As a result, businesses are either missing opportunities to move their products and services or are faced with a difficult decision to use other more costly routes. Of the 6 border crossings between Alberta and Montana, there is only one that is open for 24-hour crossing and serves as the main trade route between the jurisdictions. The Wild Horse Port of Entry currently operates only from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. $100 million in funding is now available in Ohio to help local communities eliminate dangerous railroad crossings. In a press release, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine announced that the state has approximately 5,700 railroad-grade crossings, which are locations where railways intersect with railroad tracks. Governor DeWine's new Ohio Rail Crossing Elimination Program will support the work of local communities to engineer construction projects that eliminate these crossings. It will pay matching funds that are required for additional support from the Federal Railroad Administration. The chair of the Ohio Rail Development Commission said eliminating grade crossings has a ripple effect on safety for motorists, train operators, and first responders who are often delayed by blocked crossings. California is one step closer to approving ticket cameras. The California Senate Appropriations Committee voted September 1st to advance a bill that would expand the state's authority to use automated ticket cameras. The technology has been touted by the U.S. Department of Transportation as one tool to aid in reducing traffic fatalities. The Golden State already authorizes the use of red light cameras. The ticketing tool is used in more than 30 areas around the state. Speed cameras, however, are prohibited. The bill headed to the Senate floor would authorize a 5-year pilot program to utilize speed enforcement cameras in areas described as safety corridors. Areas covered include those with a high number of crashes, those where street racing events are common, and school zones. Freeways and expressways are excluded. Tyson Foods has announced a multi-year collaboration with Gatik AI to deploy autonomous refrigerated box trucks for bolstering routes in northwest Arkansas. The trucks will operate 18 hours a day and deliver products to the company's distribution and storage facilities in the Rogers and Springdale areas. They will be equipped with commercial-grade autonomous technology and will operate on predetermined short-haul repeated routes. The collaboration begins this week. The autonomous trucks are equipped with a 26-foot temperature-controlled box. A safety driver will initially be present in the cab to monitor the autonomous system and take command of operating the truck if required. It's time to get your nominations in for Travel Centers of America's annual Citizen Driver Award. According to the company, the annual award helps recognize professional drivers who demonstrate traits that bring a high level of respect to the truck driving profession, including good citizenship, safety, health and wellness, community involvement, and leadership. On top of a cash prize, recipients of the Citizen Driver Award get the chance to choose a TA, Petro Stopping Center, or TA Express location to be dedicated in their honor. In addition, TA will make a $2,500 donation to each winner's organization of choice. Nominations are due on October 27th. To make a nomination, you can go online to citizendriveraward.com. And finally, the dog days of summer are over. Recently, dogs in Missouri got to celebrate the end of swimming season by taking a dip in a public pool. UPI reports that dozens of dogs descended on a public pool in the city of Springfield for its annual dog swim this week. Before the pool is drained, dogs are invited to take a dip. Money raised from the event will go to the city's dog park. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Ashley. We're about to hit a break, but when we come back, Mark Schirmer of Landline Magazine and I will be joined by U.S. Senator Steve Daines of Montana, who's leading the fight in the U.S. Senate against FMCSA's speed limiter ambitions. He'll lay out all his concerns for us. It's a great conversation, and it's right around the corner, right here on Landline Now, so please do stick around.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Firestone tires are for more of everything. More miles for every tire dollar, and more confidence in your fleet. At Firestone, we help fleets save with dependable value. Find your local Firestone dealer today at firestonetire.com/dealer.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Any day now, we'll get more information about FMCSA's plans to impose a speed limiter mandate on heavy trucks. But as we wait, some lawmakers are taking action, seeking to stop the agency in its tracks. Our next guest is one of them. Senator Steve Daines of Montana recently introduced the DRIVE Act, and he joins us on the line now. Senator Daines, thanks so much for joining the program. We know your time is valuable.
Very glad to join you. Thanks much.
And I should mention that Mark Schirmer of Landline Magazine is here as well. Mark, good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And Senator Daines, I want to start by asking you how this speed limiter issue first fell on your radar in the first place, and I guess in particular, why you think this issue is worthy of congressional action.
Sure. Well, first of all, as a native Montanan, the trucking industry is so important. We don't have an ag economy. We don't have an economy at all without truckers moving materials in the logistics side of our economy. Think about what's going on right now with the supply chain challenges. The last thing we need to do is to have D.C. put in some overreaching mandate here with these speed limiters. But, I've got a lot of good friends in Montana that are involved in the trucking business, and the Montana Trucking Association and others have been flagging this, saying, look at what D.C. is thinking about doing. Just when you thought they couldn't do something crazier, they did with this proposed rule. And the bottom line is the truckers, and I'll speak on behalf of my Montana truckers, play such an essential role in our economy. And it's my responsibility to ensure that they can stay safe on the job and have every resource available to them to make sure they can do their job well and to do it safely. And this is a massive out-of-touch D.C. overreach, a mandate by folks here in Washington that frankly don't understand what it's like to get up and go to work every day as a trucker.
Hey, Senator, you just used that word overreach, and I read your release when the bill was introduced as well, and also used out of touch. Can you maybe just kind of explain a little bit of what your concerns are about a possible speed limiter mandate and why it is overreaching and out of touch?
Well, first of all, these bureaucrats are going to put in place this rule that would require speed limiters. And you think about what that means. As somebody who spends a lot of time on the roads across Montana and frankly across the country, they haven't told us what the final number would be, but previous proposals have floated the possibilities of 60 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour, 68 miles an hour, which is below the speed limit in many parts of our country, and often below the speed of traffic. So you fit trucks with these speed limiting devices, it will increase congestion and actually create, in my opinion, and from others who have studied this, create actually more dangerous conditions by creating more differences in speed among vehicles on the roads. These bureaucrats in Washington think they're making our roads safer. I believe they actually will make our roads less safe because of this overreaching rule.
Yeah, and we should mention that your bill, the DRIVE Act, has a companion piece of legislation in the House introduced by Representative Josh Brakeen of Oklahoma, who we've also spoken with on the program here. He has come at this from some of the concerns that you mentioned there, right? The safety concerns, the inconvenience concerns. He also comes at this from a states' rights perspective as well. I imagine, and I have to imagine, that you have similar concerns as well?
Well, I do. Our founding fathers believed strongly in the principles of federalism in terms of protecting the rights of states. And look, in our interstate highways in Montana, the speed limit across most of our interstate highways in Montana is 80 miles an hour. Now, that's the right level for Montana. A different level may be needed in a more congested state, but that's where we're at in Montana. So imagine these bureaucrats in Washington dictating basically where truckers need to drive in Montana when they'll be well below the moving traffic levels. That actually creates more unsafe conditions. And so this is about standing up for the rights of the states. And truckers, as they move from state to state, they'll respect the laws. If Montana is 80 miles an hour, that's fine. But if they go to a different state that maybe has a 70-mile-an-hour limit or 65 or whatever, well, that's what that state's deemed the right speed limit for them. But to have D.C. dictate some kind of throttle here, saying you can't go above 65 everywhere, is not only a violation, in my opinion, of the rights of states, but it will create more unsafe conditions by having traffic moving slower than the normal traffic speeds.
Senator, your bill right now, I believe, has 8 co-sponsors, and I believe the House bill has 27. But right now, so far, it's been all Republicans that have signed on. What do you think needs to be done to not only just gain more co-sponsors in general, but to actually get somebody across the aisle to convince them that this is a problem?
Well, I think it's really important that the folks at the grassroots level and our associations are working together to call their senators, call their members of Congress to push back on this radical agenda. And I think it's another reminder about elections having consequences. But we need to make the argument and make it in the terms that reflect back on their state. You think about our founding fathers gave every state 2 senators. The states need to step up and make their argument back to their respective senators and tell them why this is going to create unsafe conditions and why it doesn't make sense. Because, the other part of this, too, imagine if you can go across Montana 80 miles an hour on the interstate, but they're going to require trucks to go across at 65. I mean, I think the average person would look at that and say, that's going to create unsafe driving conditions. You got slow-moving trucks, fast-moving vehicles. The truckers are on the road longer periods of time. That's not a good thing. So it's really important the grassroots gets out there, makes their calls, their senators, put pressure on key senators in states that we could persuade and get some Democrats on this bill.
Yeah, as you might imagine, our listeners and readers have lots of concerns about this issue. We always tell them it's a good idea to reach out and educate their representatives in Washington, D.C. about these issues and others, obviously, that affect truck drivers on the road. This is clearly a prime example of that. When our listeners reach out to Washington, D.C., to the representatives, what advice would you have for them if they want to make a difference on this issue when they have these conversations with their representatives? What should they be saying? What can and should they be doing, do you think?
Yeah, I think just lay out the argument. You think about the fact there's probably 10,000 bills floating around at any given time here on Capitol Hill. This is a bill that I think is common sense. And it doesn't take long to make the argument around why this actually would create more dangerous driving conditions. So I think you always try to understand, why is the other side doing this? They think that they're going to make the roads safer. That's the reason they want to put this mandate in place. We can make a very clear argument around why it will actually create more unsafe conditions. It will have unintended consequences. So I think making that argument to the elected officials in a common sense way would be my recommended approach.
So when the advance notice proposed rulemaking came out, there was about 15,000 comments. And if you go through them, almost all of them are from truck drivers and almost all of them are opposed. But, mentioning some of the things that you talked about, the common sense approach, when you really think about what this would do, what do you think it'll take to get this message out to drivers of passenger vehicles as well that would likely be opposed to this if they understand what this would actually cause?
Yeah, well, that's why I think you see, as you mentioned, I think we're up to nearly 16,000 comments now, have overwhelmingly been opposed to this. But I think telling the stories of what this might do. You just imagine for a moment, you're a trucker's coming down the interstate highway in Montana. There's some slow-moving vehicles he or she wants to get around. You want to be able to accelerate in the passing lane, and you've got an 80-mile-an-hour speed limit. If they've got a throttle that says you can't go faster than 65, I mean, it requires that truck then to swing out in the passing lane and be there a lot longer than it needs to be, which frankly it creates unsafe conditions. And so I think we have to tell the story and examples of why this actually will create more safety problems instead of making our roads more safe.
And Senator Daines, I don't want to get too far into the weeds here because we're talking about legislation and, that isn't always the most exciting thing to talk about. But in this case, I think it's important because, we mentioned that your bill here, the Drive Act, would prohibit FMCSA from imposing a speed limiter mandate. Can you just talk about the process of what that would look like and specifically what your bill would do to stop that process from moving forward?
Yeah, well, basically, we have the ability through legislative means here to overrule a regulatory agency on this, and so there'd be a process going through a committee hearing as well. It'd be in the jurisdiction we call the Commerce Committee, and that would be helpful because I think it would shine light on the issue. Generally, our democratic processes work best when there's the light of day shining on the facts. So bring the facts to bear here in Washington, build momentum around it, and then ultimately it'd be a vote on the floor of the United States Senate. But it's going to take a few hurdles we got to jump over here to get to that point.
Yeah, this bill was introduced not that long ago, and then obviously the August recess. But so far, talking to other lawmakers, trying to get them on as co-sponsors, what sort of feedback are you hearing, and what kind of momentum do you expect to build here in the coming months?
It's early, and I think senators, and you can see who have co-sponsored this with me. They're senators from big states, wide open states that immediately get it. I think we just have to continue to make the argument for some of those states that may not quite jump on board as fast. I think the safety argument is the most important argument. Clearly, it's in everybody's best interest to make sure our highways are safe, that our truckers remain safe. When we show senators and members of Congress that, in fact, this would have a reverse effect, it would actually make our highways less safe, I think that's the most compelling argument. I mean, all of us, you think about, we've got our kids out there driving now, so we all want to have safe highways. Of course we do. I think when we show them that this actually create unsafe conditions, I think, in my opinion, it's one of the strongest arguments.
And we should also emphasize, too, that the time to act really is now, because once we get more information here and then, coming days, coming weeks, we're not sure when FMCSA is going to put out that information, but once that happens, the momentum really is going to kind of take off. And stopping this thing before it gains traction is going to be a lot easier than, taking it away after it does go into effect. So really, now is the time to act on this.
It really is, because I will tell you, I've introduced this bill as a way to stop it. The most expedient way to stop this is to stop the Biden administration from doing this in the first place. So it's really important. That old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. We got to have folks squeaking loud, screaming loud, and voicing their opinion now. Because if we could stop the Biden administration from imposing this rule, that's the fastest way to solve this problem. If the rule is put in place, the legislative remedy will take a lot longer. So while we still have time and as we say in Montana, legal shooting light if you're a hunter, now's the time. Now's the time to act while we can to push back on the Biden administration. And remember, there's a big election coming up here in November of 24. Put pressure on those members of the Senate and members of Congress who maybe on the Democrat side are more moderate, who realize that if they got their truckers rallying against them, that's not good for them politically. So you got to leverage the politics here as well to get the outcome.
Yeah, we'll certainly continue to urging our listeners and readers to reach out and push this thing forward. Senator Daines, you've been very generous with your time. Wanted to give you a chance here if you have any final words for our listeners or readers.
Yeah, well, first of all, just a heartfelt thank you to the men and women out there who are on the highways day in and day out, away from their families, driving this economy. The last we need to do with the high fuel prices and the challenge we face in supply chains is now to have this mandate come down from the Biden administration. So it's a thank you to the long hours on the road. Stay safe out there, and let's not let D.C. take away a really important part, which is the freedom to decide how fast we want to go within legal speed limits. They should not tell us what the speed limit is. That's up to the states.
Senator Daines, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Senator.
You bet you appreciate it.
Our thanks to Senator Steve Daines of Montana for his time. Landline Now is back in just a moment.
Forget miss accuracy, weigh your truck on a CAT scale.
When you weigh on a CAT scale, you get a no excuses guarantee. You can now save time weighing by using your smartphone. Find out more at weightmytruck.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
A blank space on many maps with the distance between parking spaces seemingly as great as infinity. It is the boundary that separates safety and security from the dangers of the road, the space between electronic signs and a place in which to rest. It is not a dimension of the imagination, but instead the reality faced by truck drivers every single day. It is a place we call the parking zone. Here are your guides for this journey into parking news good and bad, Scott Thompson and Tyson Fisher.
Thanks, Mark. Scott here. Tyson, good to see you. Thanks for being here as always.
Hey, good to be here.
We've got a smorgasbord, I think I'm saying that right, of content today. We're going to kind of move through these issues pretty fast because we've got a lot of things that are going on out there, and they're all over the country with regard to truck parking. And we're going to start in Memphis here, where something interesting, rather interesting, is happening, I think. There's a new truck parking facility going in, and a lot of money is going into it. Tell us what we know about this project.
Yeah, it's a Houston-based firm called Riggy's. And Riggy's is a secure parking facility for trucks. And as you mentioned, it's coming to Memphis, Tennessee. It's expected to open within the next 6 months, and the $5 million project includes 230 truck parking spots at 5178 Citation Drive in Memphis. So 230, that's quite a bit. And Memphis area is in dire need of truck parking. That's why they're going down there. But the cool thing about it is that it's not just truck parking. The Riggy's facility in Memphis is set to have various amenities for drivers as well. And that would include a trucker's lounge facility, which is expected to consist of restrooms, showers, and washers and dryers. And so in addition to that, the facility plans to have perimeter security fencing and live security cameras monitoring a well-lit lot 24/7. So,
yeah,
pretty.
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. And what's even more than that is that according to the Memphis Business Journal, there could be another 3 or 4 Riggy's parking facilities in the Memphis area. So they're not looking just to set up one parking facility in Memphis. They see that there's a huge need for truck parking in the region in general.
Yeah.
And so they're looking to, like I said, to expand several more locations in the future.
And just to be clear, this will not be free parking, right? Is this park to pay or pay to park, I should say, or do we know yet?
We do not, but
okay.
If I had to guess, it's probably pay parking.
Yeah,
because
it seems
it's a private
like it.
facility, and so most of the time these are pay parking facilities.
Gotcha.
The only time you'll see free parking is if it's affiliated with a truck stop or a rest.
Right, which makes sense. Yeah, but again, we'll get more details as this thing gets closer to opening.
Sure.
But you do get those things that you talked about, right? You get, fencing, added security, you get some amenities there that can maybe, make up for the cost that it will require there. So we'll keep an eye on that and we'll see how it plays out. We're talking about obviously private enterprise picking up the slack here with regard to the truck parking crisis. We always kind of dance in between, private enterprise and what state governments and federal government are doing here with the truck parking crisis. In terms of private enterprise, we've got another example here. Fat Dogs Travel Centers expanding really quickly, it looks like, throughout Nebraska, and they're putting a pretty good-sized dent in the parking problem there.
Yeah, a colleague of mine, staff writer Ryan Wachowski, picked up on this one. So Fat Dogs, it looks like they're based mostly in Nebraska here. And they broke ground on 2 new locations. One is located in North Platte, Nebraska, right off of Interstate 80, exit 179. The completion date for this one is expected to be by the fall of next year. And this would include 150 truck parking spaces, so another fairly large parking facility over there. The second location would be in Lexington, Nebraska, and that truck stop will have about 30 truck parking spaces. And that should be finished by in June of next year. And then also third, a Grand Island, Nebraska location is currently under development. When that one will be located off of Interstate 80 and U.S. Highway 281. So in total, you take all of these new locations that Fat Dogs, the travel centers, is wanting to add. They're going to add nearly 300 truck parking spaces in Nebraska. So Nebraska,
good number.
That's a great number, especially in Nebraska, which they're not exactly like the problem region in the United States. Although there are pockets in Nebraska that are in need of truck parking, and I would imagine Interstate 80 would be one of those pockets where truck parking is definitely needed.
Yeah, good news for truckers who, do business there in Nebraska. Looks like quite a few truck parking spaces are coming there. Less great news for those who work in South Dakota. We're talking the closure of a couple truck parking sites. We're only talking 16, I think, and you'll correct me here if I'm wrong, but 16 truck parking spaces in total. But for those truck drivers that depend on those areas, this is going to be an issue for them.
So it was recently announced that the South Dakota Department of Transportation recently closed the Hydewood truck parking sites, and that's about 15 miles south of Watertown on Interstate 29. So as you pointed out, you are correct. It was 16 truck parking spaces total, but it doesn't seem like a lot. But as you pointed out, I mean, that's 16 spaces that aren't
going to be there. Yeah,
aren't going to be there.
They're there now, or were there recently, and not there anymore.
In a lot of truck drivers, they have rest areas as part of their regular route, and so if this was part of their regular route, and it's now no more. But a study conducted by the South Dakota Department of Transportation shows that an average of 95 trucks per day use the truck parking sites in some way. So, I mean, that's 95 a day. That's not going to have that.
They're going to be searching for another place.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it's, it's not nothing. That's for sure. Just because it's 16 and not 200 doesn't mean it's not going to have some downstream effects for the truckers.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's part of the bad news. The other bad news is exactly why this is closing. It's closing for maintenance problems. And the maintenance problems,
quote unquote.
Apparently there are no bathrooms at these sites. And so the state has been faced with trash and human waste being dumped on the sites. So again, sometimes the bad apples in the industry kind of ruin it for everybody on this one.
Yeah, this is something Marty Ellis, the driver of the OIDA tour truck, talks about all the time. Take care of your stuff. You don't litter. Don't set a bad example or make others look bad by kind of doing this stuff. And unfortunately, in this case, at least that's what the South Dakota DOT is kind of attributing this issue to. Hopefully at some point they'll reopen this and we won't have the same problems again. And
they did say that they are considering adding bathrooms into it. They're just trying to figure out ways to mitigate this problem.
Sure. That would be one. Yeah,
that would certainly be one of them. Yeah,
you would think. Yeah, absolutely. Let's move through these next issues pretty quickly here, Tyson. With several minutes to go, Macon-Bibb County in Georgia adding some spots off of I-475, maybe. This is a very busy area, obviously, for trucks, and they need all the help they can get. What's going on there?
So, Macon, Georgia may get a new truck parking lot here. This is according to WMAZ-TV. Joyride Logistics has applied to build a lot off of Interstate 475 in Macon-Bibb County. And anyone who drives in that region knows that, as you pointed out, very, very busy area. This is definitely... Anytime a truck parking study is done, it indicates that this is definitely a huge problem, compared to the rest of the nation. So, as proposed, there will be 37 truck parking spaces sitting on 3 acres. It's not a whole lot, but man, in this part of the country, any amount will be greatly appreciated. So no other details are known, as of this conversation, but truck parking will likely be paid spots because, again, this is just a private lot.
Sure.
But again, in this part of the country, any truck parking will do. If you got to pay for paid parking, then so be it. It's better than, facing violations.
Yep.
That's for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that and see how that one progresses there in Macon-Bibb County. Moving on to Ohio here quickly, we've got a new Sheetz location there.
Yeah, just real quick on this one. A new Sheetz has opened a location off US 42 in London, Ohio. In addition to 7 diesel-fueled lanes, the truck stop also features more than 40 free overnight truck parking spaces.
Free. Put it in neon
Right.
lights, yeah.
Sheetz has a large presence in the area, with the latest location being the 24th store in the Columbus, Ohio area alone. So, yeah. But the key there being 40, again, free overnight truck parking spaces, as we usually see with truck stops, truck stops,
Sure.
truck stops, travel centers, rest areas. You're likely going to see that free being the key word there, free.
Yeah, absolutely. Underline it, put it in bold, and italicize it, or whatever you want to do there, for sure. Let's move back to the southeast here. We talked about Macon-Bibb County being a busy spot for trucks. So is Orlando. The Florida DOT, we've talked about this before. They've been very active, at least in recognizing that the truck parking problem is a very big problem in Florida.
Yeah.
They're trying to do something about it. They are looking to add some more spots to the Orlando area. What are the plans there?
Sure. As you mentioned, the Florida DOT has been proactive with this. They've already opened 2 locations off of Interstate 4. I think that was earlier this year. But now they have, 5 more sites that they're proposing. One of them is in the Osceola Polk Line Road and Poinciana Parkway Extension. That site would include 234 spaces, which is quite a bit. That site, the target for design is 2025 with the right-of-way phase in 2028 and 2029. So we're not talking anytime soon, but these things do take time to build. And,
they do, yeah.
Especially with 234 spaces. I mean, it's going to take a little bit of time. There's another one off of Orange Sand Lake Road at John Young Parkway. This site would include 109 spaces on 20.2 acres. Another one off of eastbound Interstate 4. This location would include 275 truck parking spaces. And then westbound Interstate 4 in Volusia County, that site would have 253 spaces. And then finally, another one in Seminole County, Interstate 4 at US 1792. That site would include 132 truck parking spaces. And so anyway, hundreds and hundreds of truck parking spaces within these 5 alone off of the stretch of Interstate 4 in the region. So that would greatly help that part of the country.
Yeah, and props to the Florida DOT for, again, recognizing the problem and doing something, or at least trying to do something about it. It is refreshing when you see state DOTs, and many of them are great, and they recognize that this is a real problem, and they're trying to do something about it. So again, props to the Florida DOT and all the other state DOTs out there, doing something to help alleviate the problem. Tyson, we've only got a minute left. You've got a long list of stuff that you wanted to talk about, and I just want to give you a chance here. Is there anything that you want to make sure we emphasize here at the end?
Let's talk about the new Love's locations real quick, because
Sure.
we're talking about, private industry getting into the game and free truck parking, so
ring the bell, free.
So Love's has opened up several locations over the past couple of weeks. So just real quick, there's one in Canyon City, Colorado, another in Cotulla, Texas, one in I'm going to butcher this name, I'm sure, but Opelousas,
I think you nailed it.
Opelousas, Louisiana.
Yeah, you got it.
And
I think you got it.
My favorite one is Jackpot, Nevada.
Yeah, I love that name. It's perfect for Nevada, too.
It is. Only in Nevada can you have a city named Jackpot.
Absolutely. Love that name. Hey, Tyson, always good to see you. We appreciate you coming by and giving these updates to us.
It's a pleasure being here.
Our thanks to Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine. Check out his updates on the truck parking crisis, for better and for worse, over on the Landline.media website and in every issue of Landline Magazine. We've got to pull over and take a break, but we'll put things back in drive here on Landline Now in just a moment. Stick around.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now. Welcome back. There are a number of critical questions you need to answer in order to run a successful trucking business. Among the most important of those questions are, where's the freight going to be and how much is it going to pay? Today, Landline Now senior correspondent Ashley Blackford will bring us answers to both of those important questions with a look at this week's freight markets with the folks from DAT. Here's Ashley now with the report.
Thanks, Mark, and hello once again to Robert Rouse with DAT. How are you doing today, Robert?
I'm doing great, Ashley. Thanks for asking.
Now, as we move closer to fall officially being here, what happened in the spot market last week?
Yeah, last week we saw just over about a 3% decrease in total load volume to just over 1.353 million loads. One interesting thing is we recently talked with Jason Miller. He's a professor of supply chain management at Michigan State about the current market dynamics. One of the things he said really stuck out to me in particular. He said, we're currently experiencing the largest inventory correction cycle in the modern economic history as import-centric wholesale and retail trade firms right-size inventories in response to both less demand in 2021, but especially the excess inventories they built up from over-ordering in late 2021 and the first half of 2022. This is something that's going to be really important for us to watch as the fall shipping season comes closer. And we look at normally we would see increased shipping volumes for those Thanksgiving and Christmas inventories when they'll be hitting the shelves later this year. But potentially some of those over-ordering is still impacting that freight movement that was in the 2022 is still impacting even in 2023. So something we're watching. The number of trucks on the DAT load board decreased again by about 8%, down to 352,000 trucks. So we're still watching truck volumes pretty closely, but still fairly strong for the truck market. One of the positive notes of the spot market last week was that load-to-truck ratios continue to increase across all three equipment types. The higher load-to-truck ratio means that there's a stronger demand for trucks in the marketplace. Looking at reefers, Labor Day is all about beaches, barbecues, and ball games as thousands packed college football stadiums over the weekend. Over 150 million people enjoyed a cookout usually during this time period. And that boosts reefer volumes nationally by just over 5% last week, while capacity still tightened following a 10% decrease in total carrier equipment posts in reefer. And the net result was a 5% increase in reefer load-to-truck ratio from 4.3 to 4.52. So that's good to see. The other thing that we looked at was national benchmark broker carrier spot rates for all three equipment types increased last week. So vans jumped a little bit to $2.16 per mile. That's an increase of about 3 cents per mile last week. Reefers also jumped to $2.59. That's one of the first times that we've seen that jump since mid-July. It's still lower than last year, but about 9 cents per mile higher than 2019. And for flatbeds, they're up to $2.58 per mile. So after dropping by 6 cents per mile over the previous 4 weeks, the national average flatbed spot rate reversed course and increased by 3 cents. So we gained a little bit of that back. So that's all good to see.
Now, with changing seasons, we are starting to see some different produce hitting the local grocery stores. What types of produce are moving in large volumes this time of year?
September means that it's pumpkin season officially, as it begins in September and runs all the way through November. Pumpkins are grown across the United States, and you'll find them in almost every state. The crop conditions that vary a lot depending on local climate and soil conditions. So you get a very different pumpkin depending on the source of it. However, the majority of pumpkins in the country are produced in just a handful of states. Some really interesting facts about pumpkins. There's nearly 1.5 billion pounds of pumpkins produced in the U.S. each year, and 90% of those pumpkins actually come from Illinois. Michigan is ranked number 4 in the national production of pumpkins, and Michigan generated 9.8 million from the production of 79 million pounds of pumpkins. The ideal storage temperature for cured pumpkins is about 50 to 55 degrees. When some tips and tricks around thinking about the pumpkins delivery, pumpkins are usually loaded into large boxes on skids that can be easily loaded by forklift, but they do require either a vented van or a reefer. Either allows the proper ventilation so that way the pumpkins do not become overripe. Pumpkins are extremely sensitive to ethylene gas, and a small amount of ethylene can cause a lot of issues with premature ripening, decay, and discoloration, and all of which affect the value of the fruits. That's why it's important to pack pumpkins correctly and avoid any release of ethylene, which may affect the entire load. Unfortunately, there's a lot of other types of fruits and vegetables that produce high levels of ethylene, like apples, bananas, mangoes, and potatoes, for example, give off a lot of ethylene, even if they are undamaged. That means if you ship a mixed load with pumpkins, some of this ethylene-producing produce, the chance of premature ripening and decay is massively increased. So you don't usually see a lot of cross loads, and it's mostly just all pumpkins. Some things to watch out for when hauling pumpkins are to understand where and how they'll be loading the pumpkins. Some farms may have different processes or potentially not even in boxes. They might be floor loaded. Another thing to watch out for is the potential loading time of the farm. Some will have you on your way within a normal time frame, a couple hours. I've heard a lot of stories of drivers being held up for long detention times waiting to be loaded, some even 12 to 15 hours. So definitely something you want to check in with your broker when you're booking those types of loads. And lastly, since pumpkins weights can vary and every skid will most likely slightly weigh different weights, it's pretty crucial that you weigh after leaving the farm to ensure that you're legal to haul, so that way you don't have any issues there as well.
Last week, you mentioned that diesel prices will most likely continue to rise over the next couple of weeks. What tips can you provide to help owner-operators?
Yeah, as we thought last week, we saw diesel prices increased by almost 9 cents per gallon to a national average of $4.75. However, trucks on the West Coast got hit the hardest with diesel prices averaging over $5.30 per gallon. This is important because fuel is one area that can easily make or break the profit margins for any carrier. The first things that we want to make sure carriers understand is how much fuel may be needed to haul a specific load prior to booking. Within the DAT1 app, carriers you see an approximate cost of fuel for the trip using the national diesel price average. And if that lane is on the West Coast, they would want to take that into consideration, knowing the cost will be more for those. So really understanding before booking, does it make sense to do a complete coast-to-coast haul, knowing the cost of diesel at the moment. Another tool that carriers should consider is any fuel discount programs. These can save carriers big depending on the program. While utilizing your discounts, you can use apps like the DAT1 app to find which fuel stations along your route have the cheapest fuel. While you may get that same discount at different stations, it's possible by going a little shorter or a little longer may get you to a station that has that same base discount but a lower pump price, so making it a lot more affordable. For example, if you're driving north on I-5 from California to Oregon, as soon as you cross that California border, you're going to find a little bit cheaper diesel just across the border. So checking and using those apps to find, hey, is it possible for me to go a little bit further, or maybe I need to stop just before I go into a specific state, knowing that diesel prices may be a little bit different. And while discount programs definitely help, the big cost saver is speed. Slow down, idle less, which is pretty doable in fall. And if you do have to idle, drop idling from 1,200 to 600 RPMs while sleeping. But speed is by far the biggest, though. It's really going to help impact the overall bottom line for your operating cost.
All right. If our listeners want more information, where can they go for that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can get the latest rate information at dat.com/trendlines, or look for the weekly market updates on the DAT blog. They're published every Wednesday. And check out and subscribe to the DAT IQ channel on YouTube, where our analytics and forecasting teams take a deep dive into the freight markets each week with new episodes every Tuesday.
All right. Robert, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ashley. Appreciate it.
That was Robert Rouse with DAT. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Ashley. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad.
A son.
A husband.
Wife.
I'm a writer.
Photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars. Fishing.
My kids.
Chrome. And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.